Welcome to Rich Conversations. We have another great episode here today. We are chatting with Aeden Murray from Boise, Idaho. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm excited to be on. It's like my first time ever doing a podcast with somebody. Usually I'm not as important enough for people to invite me on a podcast. So
Well, you're on our podcast and we're excited to talk to you. So we want to learn about Boise and what you're up to and all these different things. So
yeah,
why don't you introduce yourself?
sure. Yeah. So my name is Aiden. I live in Boise. I'm a software engineer for a company called Verified First. We do background screenings. I got to plug the company real quick, so we're the best one. You should totally use us, that kind of thing, right?
Nice.
So,
How long have you been in Boise?
I've been here my whole life, born and raised. So I haven't really explored too much outside of it. So that gives me a good perspective on how it's changed over the years and all that.
What I'm seeing is that Boise is becoming one of the fastest growing cities in America.
Yeah, it seriously is, man. Before coronavirus happened, it was kind of small town. You drive around every couple of months, you'd see a New Mexico plate, and you're like, oh, that's so cool. It's something from New Mexico.
Yeah.
And now it's you see 15 California cars on your drive to work. It's crazy.
Really?
Super crazy. Yeah.
Wow.
It all happened right as COVID hit.
So it's like COVID is the big variable here.
Yeah. I think it was because the work from home thing. And now everybody, you can work wherever you want, right? I choose to come to the office, but a lot of people like to do the work from home. So yeah, you hear people just, moving and having a job in a different state or whatever. That's the norm now.
Wow. Yeah, I hear more people going out west.
Really?
Yeah, like Montana too. It seems to be people want to be closer to the outdoors, I would imagine. I think that's
Yeah, it probably also has to do with the sort of the housing market and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
For all those, because Boise, we used to have a really low housing market in terms of prices and stuff, right? A normal house would be 200, 250K, right? And now those same houses are literally doubled. Same with apartment prices too. I just moved into a new apartment. And I've looked at these ones before, right? And they were half of what they are now. So
wow.
2 years ago, when I was first moving out of my parents' basement, and then so the prices are just going nuts right now. So I think that was a lot of it was because Boise was kind of this hidden gem where great, but it's not very fancy or cool, right? It's Idaho. People don't even know what that is. But now people are coming here all in droves. It's that California exodus,
So how do you feel about it?
It kind of sucks for me personally, just because for my generation, the 2019, 2020 graduates, we're at the cusp of, hey, I want to buy a house. Oh, wait, I can't unless I move to Texas kind of thing, right? If I already had a house, if I was already in the market and had an asset, that I could sell or do something with, right, then it's fine because I'm sure my property value would increase, along with my neighbors. But for people that aren't in the market and are wanting to get into the market, it's pretty tough. And I don't think it's going to go back to how it was.
Yeah. Interesting. Is that kind of reflective of how other people feel?
Yeah, I think so. There's a lot. Well, I see a lot of, posts on Facebook about it and how it's kind of affecting other people as well. But I can really only attest to what it's like from an outside of the market looking in of okay, well, now I can't have this, but it's not really affecting a lot of people. It's only really affecting my generation and below because, like I said, everybody else already has an asset, a house they could sell and rebuy and whatever.
So do older people like what's happening? Because now all their property or assets is worth more, but does it disrupt the culture and like daily life?
Yeah, it's definitely like taking a little bit of a turn. So Idaho as a state has always been very, very red. Um, and Boise has been sort of the blue neutral area. Um, and now with a lot of the Californians coming in, Boise is turning, from a political standpoint, very blue. With Mayor McLean, she's a Democrat, which is great and everything. I don't pick a party; I don't do the party game. Uh,
Yeah, I'm also in that boat.
yeah, it's all a mess. But yeah, so there's a lot of it is for the older people. They are getting upset because it's blue staters coming into their red state, right? That's usually where they're most concerned about for Boise is just
Mm.
this political drift that they're afraid that these Californians will have on Idaho. I don't really care, but I'm more of like why are you coming in and paying 100K over asking price for this house?
So this
No.
is mostly Californians that you're experiencing this with.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot of Californians.
Wow.
You see some from other states too, like Washington, Oregon. Those guys have kind of always like been here,
Mhm.
but it's mostly Californians.
Wow.
Yeah,
Well, what's the like general vibe of Boise?
it's really cool. It's really laid back for Boise at least. Once you start getting out into the wildlife, you go to like Emmett or whatever, it starts to get kind of weird. Oh, phone dropped. But in Boise, it's super laid back. It has changed though, like I said, with all these people moving in. Like 2 years ago, and my whole life that I've lived here, um, it's been mostly like you can leave your door unlocked. You're not really worried about anything. There's no like gangs or violence or anything here, right? Since it's like a small city, uh, and so it's really just been laid back. We don't really have any natural disasters. Like nothing ever really bad happens here, which is nice.
Mhm.
Sort of keeps us on the down low of you know like people just like there's really nothing that exciting that goes on here. But people just they like that because like I said, you can leave your door unlocked and you'll be fine. And it's really cool to do that like while you're living in a capital city,
Yeah.
right? So a lot of people, they're really nice here. The new people that are coming in, they're kind of weird and they don't really like they're not as friendly as maybe some of the locals. That could just be like, you know, that could not be true, like they could be very friendly and it's all the Idahoans that are rude, right? But
Huh.
yeah, I'm definitely starting to see like a little bit of a culture shift from people being like super friendly and helpful. And there's like, a lot of local businesses to like people on the street and like I'll smile at them as I walk by and they'll just look at me like I'm crazy,
Really?
Yeah,
Wow.
it's crazy. There's also a
Yeah.
lot of like, conglomerates coming here. Like you can't find, well, it's really hard to find like, for renting. All of the complexes and everything, they're going to be owned by some like big company in Chicago. Like they're like the local businesses are kind of thinning out over here, which is kind of sad.
Ideally, what you would want to happen with these like fast growing cities is that the locals who have always been there now, what they're doing now is raised and people go more to the local shops because there's more people to spend money but the opposite is happening is what you're saying.
Yeah, exactly. And it's also because of like the labor shortage right now. I mean, it's a bunch of factors. It's not just, the people coming in, but it's also the COVID thing, right? Where and the labor shortage, where a lot of these small businesses can't keep up with, the payments that, the salary that you're going to make from working at Walmart, right? Like Walmart down the street is, I think, like $17 an hour for a cashier right now because that's how they're going to get people in the door.
Yeah.
So it puts a burden on the small businesses for, what they can do like, they can't do like a $17 an hour wage for, their clerk or whatever. So who wants to
Yeah.
work at local shops?
Yeah. All of that is interesting. COVID has certainly disrupted many things.
Yeah, it's crazy, man.
Uh, so what do you think? What do you guys called? Like Boiseans or
I don't know. I think so. Boiseans, Idahoans. I don't know. You just, I don't think we have a name. Like, we don't have like Floridians or something. I don't know. It's all just hard to say. I just
yeah,
say,
nothing really rolls off the tongue really easily. So what do you think the people value most and what interests do they have? What are they into?
so a lot of people out here are really into outdoorsy stuff.
Okay.
And that's where we have like the leg up on a lot of the other cities. Because like I said, so it's really focused on being outdoorsy and being like in touch with nature and camping and all this kind of stuff. A really, really big thing out here in Boise is mountain biking and dirt biking.
Really?
Yeah, that's like
That's something I don't hear about, like typical outdoorsy activities.
yeah, it's a really big thing here. Like a lot of the trails that you go on, like for hiking and stuff, they're like half, walking trails and half mountain biking trails. And there's a company that I worked for that's headquartered in Boise. It's called Western Power Sports, and they do all of that stuff, like mountain biking, dirt biking stuff. And they're really, really popular here. If you go hiking somewhere in Boise, you're probably going to see a mountain biker like every time you go. People get really into it.
Wow. So that's
Yeah.
probably on top of like snowboarding and skiing.
Oh yeah, yeah. We have Bogus Basin is the mountain that a lot of people go on.
It's called Bogus Basin.
Yeah.
Nice.
So that's what a lot of people are into here. It's
What
a
do
lot
you
of,
do?
I like to do the hiking thing. That's one of my favorite things. And then do work, I guess, go to work.
I like going to work. Yeah.
Exactly.
Interesting. So what sights, sounds, and smells stand out to you in Boise, Idaho?
Geez, we don't really have a lot of, smells, I would say. Like I mean, that's a good thing, right? Don't got a lot of smells. Usually you want that. But I would say for sites and stuff, we have so Boise is like a desert actually in Idaho. So we have Boise and it's called the City of Trees. And the reason why it's called the City of Trees is not because we have like a bajillion trees. I mean, we do, but we don't have a lot of trees. But it's called the City of Trees because everything around it is a desert. And so when they first came over and founded Boise and all this kind of stuff, it was because there's just this giant desert. And then in the middle of all that desert, there's just trees. And they're like, why are there so many trees here? So we're going to call it the City of Trees. It's this City of Trees in this giant desert.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm trying to look at yeah, I do see that. So I see a lot of trees within the city, and then it's kind of like
yeah, it's all just
going
desert.
up into the mountains. It looks like more like high plains and just no trees.
Yeah, it's exactly how it is. Just a lot of desert. It's very dry over here.
Okay.
It's not humid at all. So yeah, it's probably just all the trees. And then when you look out sort of into outside of the valley, you just see a lot of nothing, a lot of sagebrush, a lot of yellow and orange.
Huh.
Yeah.
So if someone were to have like a few days in Boise, what would you recommend them doing?
I would say if you're going to come to Boise, you probably want to hit like the lakes and the hikes and all the outdoorsy stuff I was talking about. That's really its big main attraction. We have a lot of really good paddleboarding things out here. That's
Okay.
really fun in the summer. My girlfriend and I, we got paddleboards last summer. We went out all over the place, and we have really beautiful lakes, really beautiful rivers, all that kind of stuff. So we just load up our paddleboards into the car and take them out, pump them up, and head out on the river. And it's real nice. If you're sneaky about it, you can have a beer. It's not legal, but you gotta be about it.
Nice. What kind of cars do people drive out there?
Well, it used to be a lot of trucks, and I think it still kind of is, but now that more people are coming in here, you see a lot of kind of very average cars, right? It's not like you're driving a 90210 where you might see a Porsche or a Ferrari or something. But now that people are moving over here, especially just in Boise, like the metropolitan Boise area, you're seeing a lot of those Porsche SUVs, right? Because
Oh, really?
somebody just made like 500 grand off of their house in California and then moved over here, right? So that's usually you see a lot of Porsches now in Boise because people are coming over here and they just sold off their house and made a bunch of money. So
Wow.
yeah,
What do you drive?
I have a 2012 Audi A7. I like it.
Okay. Yeah, it's probably a nice car.
It's okay, right? It's 2012, so it's like, yeah, but it's an Audi, so it's kind of crazy. Supercharger though, right? They're kind of fast.
Do people, okay, we're about to get to this question. You're a software engineer.
Right.
I feel like people in tech like nice cars and like gadgets on nice cars.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, it kind of depends, right? If you're like, there's definitely different types of tech people. There's like me, I'm like kind of an Apple guy, right? I like the nice stuff and like, oh, it works and it's pretty, right? And then you got your total neckbeard dudes who like mad respect to them, but they'll drive like some crazy truck that they like built themselves, right? And all this kind of stuff, and they get really into it. So yeah, there's definitely like different types of tech people that like different stuff in their lives.
So so the neckbeard types, what you're saying is they're probably Android users. They like probably in their heads building the most efficient system and them like actually putting it together, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they probably like be rocking, a Pixel or something like that, like a Pixel phone, and just like have Linux on their laptop and install Gen 2 and all this crazy stuff. So yeah, but I'm more of like I've been through that phase, honestly. Like, the Android, I had Linux on my laptop. It's like this operating system that you have to put yourself on. If anybody ever watches this from the Linux community, I had Arch Linux. So yeah, I've been through all that, and then I kind of just moved on, and I was actually at work doing something on my Linux laptop. It was stuff that I had like built myself, and it was all configured fancy, and then something broke on it, and I was in the middle of something, and I went over to my boss and I was like, okay, I need a Mac. Like, I need to finish this thing today.
Wow.
So that's when I was just like, it's fine, it's whatever. I'll just do the Mac thing, and it's great. I like it.
So you work on a Mac.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay. So what sparked your interest in software engineering?
What was that? You cut out for a second.
So what sparked your interest in software engineering?
I was like everybody else, I wanted to make a game for my friends, right? I was in middle school, and I was like, dude, I want to make a video game, right? And they're like, all my friends are like, yeah, dude, you should make a video game. I was like, okay, cool. And then, you do some Googling, how do I make a game? How do I do programming, right? And from there, you sort of start to learn things. And if you're doing like basic stuff, it's pretty simple. Like if you're just doing basic, what is your name? Hello, name, or whatever. So that's sort of what got me into it. And then I just kept going and never stopped. And then, I learned about all of the stuff that you could do with it, right? And how the internet worked, how websites worked, how, operating systems work, and all this kind of stuff. And you just sort of build all of that stuff up. And how do these, how does Google manage all the traffic that it gets? How does the search engines work, right? It's a lot of that stuff. And there's a lot of really interesting theory behind a lot of it too.
Could you break down some of that stuff of what you said of like how websites work and the internet works for listeners, but definitely myself?
Yeah, sure. So like this is a super common concept that I have to talk people through if they want to know how something on the internet works. And you might know what this is too, but we have what's called a server. Do you know what that is?
Yeah.
So, when you have your laptop, right, you type in, for purposes of this, you just type in google.com. There's actually, what happens is your computer will find Google's server, and then all of the traffic that goes from your computer. Well, hold on, I guess I'm not breaking this down right. Basically, what happens is your computer says, "Hey, Google, give me your web page," and then Google will respond with its web page from its server, right? It's the reason why we call it a server, is because, let's take the restaurant scenario, right? You're somebody, you go into the restaurant, you have a menu, and you say, "I want the Google," and then the server brings you the Google, right?
Okay.
And so that's the basics of how the internet works, and all that. I mean, we can get real deep into it if you want, but I don't know if you want to.
Okay. So something I'm curious about is, maybe you're aware of this. Maybe you've taken a field trip there or something, but like, so these tech companies out on the West Coast, do they just like, they have all these servers, right?
Right.
What does that look like? And how are they stored? And are they like underground bunkers? Like how does that operate? Yeah.
It's like, so you have sort of you have a couple of different tiers for,
Okay.
let's say I'm a company A and I want to build this app, right? Let's say I want to build like a Gmail or whatever. So you have a couple of different options. One of the options, this is how more of the traditional route that people used to take, is they would buy a building and they would buy electricity, water, HVAC, stuff like that. And then they would buy servers. They would literally go and purchase servers from somewhere, bring them in, plug them in, configure BGP and everything on them, get some IP addresses from ARIN, which is the American Registry for Internet Numbers. They hand out IP addresses. They would buy IP addresses and configure BGP on their servers, which is like a protocol for the internet. And then, those would be the servers for the website that they would want, right?
Mm-hmm.
But that's not really how a lot of companies do things these days. What we do, like for Verified First, we use a cloud provider. And so what happened is like maybe around in the 2000s-ish, Facebook and Amazon and Google all had these giant data centers where they were hosting their apps. And they were like, "Oh, hey, we can make money by just renting this space out." And so that's pretty much how a lot of tech companies operate, is they don't do the whole, "I'm going to go buy a server and hook it up and everything," right? Because there's a lot of different problems with that. You got to manage a lot and you got to have a team and all that. What a lot of people do is they just go to Amazon. It's called Amazon Web Services, and they'll just rent out a server. And you click a button, you say, "How big do I want it to be?" I want 2 gigabytes of RAM, 1 CPU core, and it'll just spin it up and it'll give you an IP address that you can remote into it and configure it and everything. And then that's it.
Interesting. So if I have,
so that's how
they like store and stuff it, or what they do with it, right?
What was that?
That's like how they kind of operate now. A lot of big server data centers, and then they rent it out.
Yep, exactly.
Okay. So if I probably have like 12 domain names through Bluehost. So I buy like server space or hosting through Bluehost.
Yep.
How does that work? So is like Bluehost own part of the server somewhere and then they rent it out to me?
Yeah, so I'm not sure exactly about the Bluehost one. I don't know if they could be sort of a man in the middle between you and Amazon, right? Or they could have, their own complete, their own servers, their own bare metal servers, like physical servers that you can go touch and all that. or they could be renting them out from Amazon, making them happy and pretty for people that want to host websites, and then reselling them.
Okay.
So I'm not sure which model they use, but yeah, if it's one of the two, right?
Do most as far as like online, does every country have kind of their companies that have all the space built for all these servers, these data centers, or is a lot of it in the United States still?
No, it's so it depends on what provider you're using. So
Okay.
for example, I know about AWS, Amazon Web Services the most. They have, I can't remember how many regions they have, but they have them all across the country, right? Like I had to spin up, we have a team in the Philippines actually, and I had to spin up a VPN for them. And so I just selected their closest region was, I think, Japan or something. And so it was like stupid easy. Went into Amazon, configured the server and everything in Tokyo, and then said, "Hey, here you go, Philippines team. Here's your credentials." And you know, they were able to connect to a server that was all the way in Tokyo.
Okay.
So that's
Well,
they have a lot of data centers all around the world, and I'm sure Google does, and I'm sure Microsoft for Azure does, and all this kind of stuff. They get real into it.
so what does like a software engineer, what does that role or responsibility look like? Can you describe that?
Yeah, sure. Well, so it kind of differs from company to company, really. At my current role here, I wear a lot of the hats.
Okay.
Um, in other companies, like let's say you work for like a Google or a Workday or something, right? Usually you're sort of pigeonholed into you're going to write code, and then your code gets passed off to another team, and then to another team, and eventually it ends up somewhere. Um, so for my role, right, a lot of it is writing the code and then figuring out how to deploy the code. So I'm also doing DevOps stuff, and then managing the code and all that kind of stuff. There's a lot of infrastructure stuff that I do along with the code that I write as well,
Okay.
because you can't just write code and then have it work, right? I mean, you if you're building something for somebody or you want to run something, you need the infrastructure stuff, which is the storage and the servers and all that kind of stuff that we just covered.
Wow. Very cool. What would
Yeah.
you say? So in this like information age that we're living in, what do you see it like evolving into, the role of the software engineer over the next like 20 years?
I think it's going to be a lot of it's going to get a lot easier, and a lot more people are going to do it. Um,
Okay.
yeah, you can see this sort of already happening where it used to be 20 years ago, right? You'd have to hire some guy to write COBOL, and he'd, have to do all this math, or maybe he'd have to write some assembly or whatever, very low level machine code. But what's happened now as opposed to 20 years ago in the 2000s, we've put a lot of layers of abstraction on top of all that. So if I'm writing in a particular language, let's say JavaScript, that's more one of the higher level languages. I don't have to worry about memory allocation and pointers and all of this, computer theory stuff. I just write my code and I tell it what I want to do. So there's a lot of layers. It's like an onion, right?
Yeah.
That go on top of that. And as we keep moving forward, those layers are just going to get bigger and bigger, and it's going to be super easy to write an enterprise app and deploy it. That it's going to be so simple, and it adds to the .com bubble, you could say, and it's just going to keep getting bigger. It's going to keep getting easier. So more people are probably going to be interested in it.
Wow. Yeah. Something I'm just like so fascinated with is, so like 9 years ago, some friends and I started this organization. And so a big part of like starting this was having a website, right? So I knew nothing about websites, but my friend did a little bit. And so that's how I started to get into like hosting and domains and servers. And like what we wanted to create like didn't exist. So then we try to have a friend do it. They create websites and like as a favor. And this thing took like months and months and months. And now I can create that same website in like an hour.
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
the things I could not do because and then like at that time I was like teaching myself CSS a little bit and teaching myself code to do certain things. And now like I can literally create a website in an hour. And just like the technology within those 9 years and what's available, it's so interesting to me what's going to happen the next 9 years and how easy it's going to be for just like average people to just, hey, I want to create something for this online world.
Yeah.
How do I do it? Well, you just Google it and then it'll give you like, there'll be a YouTube video and someone will give you step-by-step instructions.
Exactly.
And like you said, there's like already so much creative. You just like the layers just keep adding up, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah. No, it'll definitely be a lot easier for people. And I think also it's going to be a lot of, I think in the next 20 to 30 to maybe 50 years, we're going to see the world start changing a lot more even after that, because not only is it making the software is going to get easier, but knowing when to use the software is also going to become more common knowledge.
What do you
For
mean by that?
So like in business, there is a lot of stuff that can be automated, like with
Okay.
code, stuff like that. Like at the place I'm working right now, we have some stuff that we've automated away with code. Once somebody was like, "Hey, I bet we could code something to do that," and we did it, and it was great, and it was awesome, and we saved some money. And but before I came in here and didn't point that out, people would just, they'd throw bodies at it. They'd hire a guy and they'd have him do this thing. Right. And so I think once a lot of the, sort of older generation or people that aren't accustomed to how you should or what you can do with technology sort of start moving along, we're going to start to see it popping up more and more because I've grown up with it. Right. It's programming is taught in schools, just pretty elementary programming. They have code camps and everything, so it's going to be a lot more accessible. And because of that, people are going to start using it more in places where they would throw bodies at it, or they would, do something or make a backroom deal to do whatever here and stuff like that. So if that makes sense, I hope it does.
Yeah. Do you think we talk a lot about like businesses? Do you think governments will like automate more? Like if they can, if like do we need to employ people in the government? We can just automate a lot of this stuff and we don't have as much like red tape to get through, I suppose.
Yeah, it could be a lot of that. I think it sort of depends on what the position is, right? Like you can't automate away a CEO or, Secretary of Defense or Secretary of State, right? You
Right.
can't just do that. But there are probably a lot of, bean counters and, maybe DMV workers or something like that, that we could eventually move to automated systems. And while that is kind of scary and dystopian and Black Mirror, the robots are going to take your jobs. That's really just where it's going to end up because, now that programming is a lot more accessible to a lot more people, people are going to be like, they're going to make the connection in their brain. They can be like, oh, wait, we can just automate that with this thing over here. And, we'll make that happen.
Yeah. So it's easier, more efficient, cost effective.
Yeah, exactly.
Um, have you ever read the book Homo Deus by Yuval Harari? That's like really interesting. He wrote Sapiens. I think maybe I don't have it up here. Which is like a brief history of humankind. So he looks at from like hunter gatherers to where we are today. And
Mhm.
then he wrote Homo Deus, which is like a brief summary of the future of humankind. And he talks a lot about like data and the skills of the 21st century that will be most valuable are communication and cognitive skills. So the ability
Yep.
to process information and think about it critically and then be able to communicate that to other people to like get things done. And
Mhm.
he talks a lot about like how data is like so valuable, and how like collective data will be used to create like a more efficient world in a
Yeah.
way. I mean, what do you think about that stuff?
What was that? Sorry, you cut out.
What do you think about like using collective data to create like a more efficient world that we interact with?
Yeah, so there's sort of two different paths that you can take with sort of the big data
Okay.
idea. You can take we're going to put it into our AI thing, right? And then Spotify will recommend you better songs that you want to listen to, right?
Which like as an individual, like it's almost like this what what will know you better, like yourself or like
Yeah, right.
the data collected on you?
Yeah, it can get scary. I don't really know a whole lot about the artificial intelligence field.
Okay.
Um, but it's definitely, you can see it happening, and you see it all the time happening, right? Like Apple Music, I have Apple Music, and they just launched something similar to their we're going to recommend you a song thing. And
Uh-huh.
over the past couple months, it's gotten better, right? And I'm like, oh, okay,
Oh,
yeah, learning.
wow.
And so yeah, it'll definitely do that. Uh, Artificial intelligence will, it's definitely one of the waves of the future that is going to be one of the next, things that we utilize often. Um, but there is like the dark side to all of that as well.
So that's the first path, is like using AI to make better decisions, right?
Yeah. Well,
And then so
using all of that data to sort of program those AIs to do the data stuff.
okay.
And a lot of people, like, Elon Musk and everything, they sort of talk about AI taking over the world and stuff.
Uh-huh.
But, and that's all, fine and good, right? The robots are going to kill us, whatever, sure. Um, but if we take a step back from that and we look at the actual data that we're using to program these AIs and stuff, that's also pretty concerning too, about how much data we give out, not just to companies, right? Like, Facebook has my birthday, I don't care. But what it does, this is one of sort of an interesting field to get into that not a lot of people talk about, is what's called open source intelligence.
Okay.
Not sure if you're familiar with that.
Yeah, tell me. I'm very curious about this.
So it's one of the it's like it's a field where basically the idea is, how much can you find out about a person, like sort of almost stalkery-ish, or a business, legally from third-party sources. So it's almost like uh, you can find a bunch of data about a person or a business, but you just have to look in the right places.
Yeah.
You can sort of aggregate all this information and build profiles and build identities about people. So a pretty easy example to walk through is, I just did a Q3 security training for the company. And one of the ways that I showed that is, well, okay, so if I'm a bad guy and I want to know where Rich lives, right? What do I got to do? Okay, I got to figure out which state he lives in. I don't know, I could probably Google it and figure it out. And then, okay, how do I find out where he lives? Well, actually, let's say you live in Idaho, for just examples purposes, right? Let's say I found out that you live in Idaho, and I know that I can just go look up your Idaho voter records, right? And so if I go to the Idaho voter records page, it needs a first name, a last name, and a birthday. And where can I find your birthday? Oh, I can find it on your LinkedIn. I can find it on your Facebook, right? Wherever else you have your birthday. And then once I put all that in, I can come up with your residential address, your registered party, all that kind of stuff, right? And then what can I do with that, right? Maybe I can call your power company and say, I want to cut off my service, right? Or I call your ISP, I need a password change. Oh, what's your residential address, right? This, and this.
Yeah.
And so it's sort of chaining all of these pieces of information together, where you can find out a lot about a person, if that makes sense. Just from,
It certainly does.
what was that?
It certainly does. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's sort of a field that I don't think a lot of people think about. They think about, oh, the AIs are going to come kill us and there's going to be robots. Yeah, like sure, right. But more importantly, what can I, as an individual, find out about you that maybe you wouldn't want me to know about, right?
What do you think about VPNs?
I think they're useful. They're not as cracked up as people say they are, right? I see them all the time on YouTube, like ExpressVPN, whatever. The government's watching you.
Yeah.
The only reason to really have a personal VPN is for when you're out and about at like an airport, it'll keep you protected there. But from, it can't protect you from big data. That's not what it does. That's not how it works.
Okay. So big data, what do you do to protect your privacy?
I do the VPN thing for privacy and stuff. Like I have a Facebook, I have an Instagram, I have a website, I have a Twitter. All that kind of stuff is, I don't really mind if Twitter knows what kind of memes I post, right? Or
Right.
whatever. But it's just sort of stuff like not having my birthday, not having where I live, keeping an eye on those data breaches that you hear about all the time in the news. Those are a real big source of how people get hacked, if that makes sense. Because when we hear about those data breaches all the time. Like I remember there was the Ashley Madison one, right?
Oh yeah, I remember when that happened. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, you see about it in the news and they say, oh, the hackers got the passwords and everything. And then we're kind of like, oh yeah, okay, whatever. But what you can actually do is you can go to services like one service I like is Intelligence X, and they aggregate all of those data sources and everything. And they're locked behind a pretty high paywall. It's like, for me, it was like $2,000 a year or something like that.
Oh wow.
Yeah, but once you're past that paywall, all of those data sources, all of those passwords, they're all aggregated and right there for you to look at. So like I could search a domain name and find employee email addresses and passwords that have been found in a data breach. I can look up just specific email addresses and find their passwords there, and just stuff like that. So
wait, so you can pay this certain amount and then you can basically, if you have an email address for somebody, you can find out their password?
Yeah, if it's been in a data breach, which a lot of them have.
What would you suggest someone to do to like protect their passwords, or like
I would probably,
so it doesn't happen to them?
well, you can't really prevent a lot of that stuff
Okay.
from happening, but you can protect yourself from the fallout of it. I would just say the smartest option is to use a password manager like 1Password. Don't use LastPass because LastPass sucks.
Okay.
So it's definitely the one you'd want to use. And so what that lets you do is have unique passwords for every site without having to like write them all down in a notebook. It's a browser extension, super easy. But like, let's say, Rich, your password was on some data breach somewhere. And maybe it's your like Adobe password, right? You're like, okay, who cares? It's my like Photoshop license. But if you also reuse that password for your bank or your PayPal, whatever, then it's pretty easy to put together.
So you should, like, every time you like sign up for something, have a different password.
Yeah, that would be like the ideal thing to do, right? Obviously, it's like not that simple. But a password manager helps with that because you don't have to, write down a new password every time you sign up for something.
Yeah. And then click forgot password and then like go through that whole process.
Exactly, right. How many times have we all done that?
Story of my life. Let's see. What's something you've noticed? What like trends in society or business have you noticed just working in the industry?
Well, in this industry, in like sort of software development, I don't know about any real trends. So this industry you can get real niche with. software engineering, it's not just software engineering as a whole, but it sort of depends on what language you're using. There are trends for all the different languages and stuff that you might be familiar with. One of the big trends that I can see though with business, and that you can see, everybody can see, is they're moving on to the cloud platform thing that we talked about, right?
Uh-huh.
Moving from traditional on-premises infrastructure to the cloud infrastructure, and just moving all their stuff to AWS or Google Cloud or whatever, which makes sense.
So that's like, instead of having an individual server, you just like rent it out from somebody, and that's the cloud server, right?
Yep, exactly.
Okay. How do you organize your digital files?
I have I have like my documents, and then inside that I have like my code and like my programming tools. And then let's see what else. I have some word lists in there. Let me look up Finder real quick.
Like when you back up your stuff, like what do you have an external? Then you use the cloud? Like how many different places do you use to back up your stuff?
I just back all my stuff up to what's called Amazon S3. That's like, it's like their giant storage provider stuff. They pretty much just provide what's called object storage, but it's think of it just like files, right?
Okay.
But the reason why is because like if you go to like one of those other backup providers, maybe they'll charge you, $50 a month for 50 gigs or whatever, right? But S3, AWS S3, if you know how to use it, it's incredibly cheap. I'm gonna look up the pricing real quick.
Yeah.
So for storage, for just sort of the standard pricing here. So first 50 terabytes per month is 0.023 cents per gigabyte. So let's see here. Like it's super cheap.
So they charge you by actual storage rather than like levels. Okay.
Yeah. So let's see here. If I have, let's say, a terabyte of storage and just this thing, it cost me like $23 a month to host it on S3. For the first 50 terabytes, so it's pretty cheap stuff. That's where I back my stuff up to.
So this last weekend we shot a short film in Wisconsin, and we were using these like heavy duty, I don't know, this camera called Alexa. So it's like really high level grade, and it goes through space. They told me like the entire project took up like 2 terabytes from like 2 days.
Yeah.
Do you see that like in the future, like everything's just going to be bigger and bigger kind of file sizes?
Yeah, I mean, for video and stuff, absolutely, right? Because, first it was, okay, we got the 720p camera and then the 1080p and then the 4K. Now we have like the 8K red cameras that just ingest files so fast, right? And like they take giant pictures and everything. And I mean, it's just sort of the human nature, right? We're going to want those crispy photos, and those crispy photos require space.
So what like what like pieces of technology are you interested in most and like you enjoy using?
So I'm like an Apple sheep guy. So like I rock the whole Apple thing, right? Because I don't know if you know about the ecosystem idea, but I rock the iPad, I rock the iPhone, I rock the Mac. They just had an Apple event yesterday, actually, where they unveiled a bunch of really cool tech for the MacBooks, where they're adding these new special magic chips in them. They're making the displays really, really good. The next MacBooks will have a notch on them, though, so get excited about that or not.
What does the notch do?
It's just for the camera and stuff, just like the iPhone.
Okay. Is there MacBook camera going to be better?
Yeah, I think they're going to upgrade that camera too.
Do you use an Apple Watch?
Actually, no, I don't do the Apple Watch thing. I have a Seiko 5 series right now.
Okay.
It's yeah, I don't like to do the Apple Watch thing because I go camping a lot and stuff.
Okay.
And you know, if I'm like out on a boat or paddleboarding or something, right?
Isn't all their stuff waterproof now or something?
Yeah, it is, but if you're out in the wilderness for like, you know, more than 2 days, then you're kind of
There's no
yeah.
power outlets there.
So this is like a mechanical watch, so it winds as I move my wrist and all that. It's an automatic. So yeah, I like to do the mechanical watch thing just because it's like, you know, just easier and cool.
Yeah. Switching gears a little bit here. What are three musical artists in your heavy rotation right now?
Kanye, dude, obviously. What else could I listen to? I got some on here. Let me take a look here real quick. What is in my heavy
So
rotation?
Donda, you listening a lot to Donda?
No, dude, old Kanye, not new
Okay.
Kanye.
What do you
New
consider
Kanye.
old Kanye?
Yeah, old Kanye, like graduation, you know.
Graduation.
Yeah. Let's see. I got a lot of Mac Miller, G-Eazy, his new album. It kind of sucked though. Um, got some Kevin Gates, Luke Combs, uh, Logic, old Logic, not new Logic, you know. But yeah, I don't know. I listen to all of it. The only thing I'm not super into yet is like metal, but I do the
Okay.
country and hip hop and pop and all that kind of stuff. So
What do people in Boise listen to
a lot,
generally?
actually.
Country?
Yeah, we're
Yeah, I
super
see
into
that.
it. Yeah. So they like pretty much all of the radio stations are country, which if you're into it is cool, but if you're not into it, it kind of sucks.
Do people wear a lot of flannel out there?
Surprisingly, no, actually. It's a lot of, well, I guess, no, not really flannel. That's kind of like a hipster thing now. Now it's a lot of like, I don't know, just t-shirt and jeans and boots.
Okay, got it. What are three people or things that have influenced your outlook on life?
Um, I would say so. I have a couple of mentors that I've learned a lot from. Right. One of my big mentors really was my where I worked previously at Western Power Sports. My boss there, he was like a really awesome dude in a lot of different ways. So he sort of changed my outlook on a lot of things. So he was really nice. Like he was like the nicest guy in the entire world. Like never like really got upset or anything, right? He was like super laid back, super cool. And I just really enjoyed being around him so much. And I was like, man, I should try to be as nice as I can, right?
Yeah,
Obviously we all try to be like nice, but now I try to be like extra nice, like he was, right?
that's good. That's good.
Yeah. So he was really cool. He really taught me uh, you know, what it is to really have that impact on somebody and truly treat them really, really well. Just, you know, and then he also was a huge mentor for me in terms of my career as well, because I'm all self-taught. I didn't like go to school for any of the stuff that I did.
Okay.
And so when I was starting out in my career, like 2 years ago, I came in, I knew how to code, right? I could do all of the fancy things. But there's a big difference between knowing how to code and knowing how to code correctly, right?
Okay.
And how you actually build and maintain an enterprise app. And so that's what really set him apart from me is he knew all of the stuff you should do, and this is how you should structure your code. This is how you should structure your architecture, all that kind of stuff. And he taught me a lot of really good design practices for how I'm designing an application.
Okay.
And so I still carry that on right today. And that's one of the really, really important things that previously I had no idea, right? I just pop in and kind of start making stuff.
Yeah.
and going willy-nilly and everything. And now I want to think about how I'm designing all of my code and everything, especially when I'm building an application for the enterprise.
Nice.
So he was one of my really good mentors. And then I got a lot of good mentors here where I'm at currently as well. Excuse me. So my immediate boss, Ron, he's really cool. He's very, he's like a dad,
Okay.
So he's all like, I don't really know how to describe him, but he's very straight to the point, but like in a good way, right? Not where like in a mean way.
Mm-hmm.
And he's sort of that, when you're working in business or when you're really, managing a big project, you kind of have to be straight to the point, right? You don't want to like pussyfoot and sugarcoat around these, right? For example, right, we had, an outage a couple months ago where we did a change, we messed things up. And so we got on a call, right? And usually it'd kind of be like, this is how I was maybe before I started working here and learning these things. But, we had an outage and maybe I'd be like, oh, geez, like, oh no, what's going on, right? And being like, I'm scared versus just like, is being like, this is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to do it, right? And during the outage, I actually completely on accident nuked our web server.
No.
Yeah, it was like, so in the middle of an outage, now we have another outage. And so, I was just like, we were on a call and I was like, hey, Ron, I just blew up the server. We're going to need a new one. And he's like, okay. And I'm like, okay. And then I went and built a new server. Whereas maybe before I would have been like, guys, well, I don't know what I'm going to do. And then I like, right. Or something like that.
Yeah.
And he just told stories about engineers who completely nuked something and stood up, started crying and walked out. Right. At least. Yeah. So it's really about, you got to just like, this is business. This isn't like, messing around or whatever. Like if you've lost, like, it's cool. Just own up to it. Right.
Yeah.
It's fine. Just be a part of the solution kind of deal. Right.
Yeah. Be a part of the solution. I like that. What's something you're curious about recently?
I don't know. I don't know if I'm really curious about a lot of things. I guess it's more, I would say the thing that I've been most curious about recently is how businesses actually work.
Okay.
And I kind of got into that because I'm starting my own business with Verified First. Me and a couple dudes here are trying to start another business. And it's really interesting to see how like Verified First, since like I can go talk to the CEO, like at Verified First right now. I can talk to the president, like we know each other, right? It's cool. Versus that's not how it was when I was working at Western Power Sports. Like I couldn't go like talk to the CEO. I couldn't talk to the big people in the company. That's kind of how it is at a big company. Like I said, you get pigeonholed and you don't really talk to anybody. Versus at a smaller company like this, right? I can go talk to the man and like chat with him and sort of pick his brain. So I've been trying to use that opportunity to learn more about how this stuff is actually made. Like how do we get clients? How do we keep clients, right? Like what is the process for that? Like what does sales and marketing actually do, right? Sometimes I sit in on some of the sales and marketing calls, not because I'm, supposed to, not because I can help or whatever, but just so I can, what do you guys like really do? And like, okay, how does that all work in the giant, system that is the company?
Yeah, that's a good thing to be curious about.
Yeah.
Yeah, your head's in the right place. So then what's something that excites you for the next 2 years?
I would say just sort of seeing where my career takes me. That's really what I'm focused on right now in my life. is just my career. I'm excited to see where this company that I'm building grows. See if it works. Hopefully, right? Let's not get our hopes up, but we'll see how it works and see if I can make some good decisions and do that. And yeah, that's really what I'm excited about.
That's great. Well,
Yeah.
thanks for taking the time to chat with me today.
Yeah, no problem, man. It was like super awesome and fun.
Yeah, I learned a lot. I appreciate you sharing all that with me, especially the technology and learning about Boise more, get an insider's perspective on this stuff.
Yeah, no, that's awesome, man. I appreciate you having me on.
All right. Well, thank you again.
Yeah, of course. Thank you.